Hey everyone! So today I'm going to show you how I like to start my paintings. You might think I'd start with a line drawing, but my typical approach is to go right in with big shapes of value, and I'm going to show you how to do that today. This is my favorite part of the painting process. And this is actually the beginning section of my class, Paint With Me, Digital Portrait Painting in Procreate. In that class, I'll walk you through the whole painting process, start to finish in real time. You'll also get my exact Procreate brushes, the reference image, and texture ready to go for free when you join in. If you watch the class on Skillshare using my link below, if you're a new member, you can grab a trial and try out Skillshare for free too. So don't wait and jump into the full class if you'd like to paint with me. But for now, here's how I like to start my paintings in Procreate. Please enjoy and let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so can I be honest here? I'm scared to start this painting. So first off, know that feeling is normal. I've painted probably 1,000 faces, and sometimes that fear can still creep in. But have confidence in this fact. Right now, at the beginning of this painting, you've got no skin in the game. You've not invested any time in this piece yet. It's not precious yet. There's nothing to lose. So roll with these 2 words if you have fear approaching the blank canvas. Just start. I'm going to begin by grabbing my 6B large with flat edge brush. I find that this is a really nice painterly brush to begin carving in with shapes of value. And then in your layers, just make sure you're on your painting layer. And then I'm going to bring my brush size up a little bit. And then I just want to select a basic skin color here and just start. I'm beginning with the shape I'm seeing for her face. Thinking sort of in angles. Let's get more of a mid-tone instead of that light color. It's better to get a richer tone for these base colors, I find. And then here, I'm seeing this shadow shape. All of this is grouping into shadow. So I'm just going to very quickly start establishing that there's a light side and there's a shadow side. And obviously the placement is not accurate at all, but we're putting something down so we have something to build from. Then her neck is going to come down like this. Here I'm picking up this color for the hair. See this nice little swing that happens? It's like the number 9 almost. So that's the swing and flow I'm going to try and capture throughout this whole piece. And in here it gets super dark, so let's go in with that now. Don't be afraid to get that dark in there, because that's how you're going to start establishing your values. Don't be shy with these dark values. Sometimes we can be so timid with the paint, so that we never get anywhere with the painting. But if you boldly put in your darkest dark value, that'll help push you forward. Now moving on to the scarf, notice that even though it's a white scarf, it's not actually white. It's a gray mid-tone. So a quick note about the color picker and my thoughts on it. I actually learned about color originally by using soft pastels and oil paint. So I feel okay about using the color picker because I feel like I have that background knowledge and this is just a tool for me to get where I'm going faster. But if you don't want to use the color picker, then by all means don't use it. Make your best guesses for color and go from there. Use this as a color study if you want to. There's this little break here separating shirt from skin. This is where all her neckland is. And it's so dark in there. And what I'm doing that you can't see that I'm doing is I'm squinting my eyes down at this piece because I want to be able to see the value structure. There's a very clear value structure that's happening. Let me just go ahead and put in that dark right now. So all this goes dark, so I'm just going to go for it. There's no point holding back in this beginning stage, so just go for it. You've invested only a few minutes in this so far, so put those colors down on the canvas. So then here in the back, this value is a bit darker than over here. So I'm picking up this darker value because that's going to pop really nicely against the light of her scarf. So something else you can look at when you're placing this stuff is negative space. So real quick, let me add a layer on top here and look at this negative space with you. Actually, let me grab this brush. It's a little easier. So what we want to do is look at the negative space. So when I'm placing her on the canvas, I'm thinking about this shape here. This general shape. And I don't mean her, I mean this negative shape behind her. I'm thinking, how can I draw that shape? Since this is just a random abstract shape, it's less precious to us than a person. So it's therefore easier to draw it in its exactness without your brain saying, hey, I know that, that's a face, it looks like this, and then drawing something that looks like a potato. But really, observing and drawing the negative space instead of the subject themselves can make placing them on the canvas so much easier. So when I'm placing her on the canvas, I'm thinking about painting that shape, not her, the background. So let's delete that. And back on the painting layer, let me grab the 6B brush again. Now that we've taken a look at the negative space, how can we place this a little better? Well, I'm noticing that I gave too much gray background on the left. So the face needs to plunge forward a little more. And I'm noticing already that I've drawn this shoulder way too low. So I'm going to have to think all the way across here and draw the shoulder. So it's going to be more about right here. And as a result, that chin is about right there, I'd say maybe. And then here with this negative space, my space is a little too large. So I'm going to just go like that for the moment. And again, the shoulder needs to be pulled up because I'm seeing here, if I go here, bring a line straight across, it's more about there. Tip of the shoulder is more about here. I'm seeing her head could be rounded out, so I'm going to grab one of these mid-tone oranges and add that up here. So I'm shifting to painting the positive shapes right now, but not without considering and observing that negative space. Okay, so everything's still in blob land. Let's consider where this cut happens between the scarf and the dark value of her hair. So I'm just going to kind of line up here and just drag my hand across. And it swoops around like this. So any chance you get to find a rhythm or something beautiful or flowy in your piece, grab onto that. Here we have this hair again, and it pulls from here. And then here, that hair pops into light. So we're not going to think about hairs. We're thinking about shapes still. So this is just a blob of light. So right here, this has more darkness in here. And then it warms up a bit right here. The cylinder of her neck is right here. There's the cylinder of her neck kind of going into her chest. So this is her chest, and it's a bit darker. So I'm going to darken that up so we can kind of start to feel that plane change. This is going to be the neck. And as we can see, it's pretty sharp right there and soft on the other side. So it's sharp right here, and this brush is perfect for this. And it's softer over here. And right here, we have another little shadow. And I don't want to shy away from it because that's an essential part of this lighting scenario. So I'm going in now and I'm just going to put in that little darkness. Another thing I want to grab onto is this ear. So I'm going to grab the darkness of that ear, just kind of float it over, okay? Float it on over and place that. So this is where that ear is going to land. And I want to get this part in the light a little bit. So right around there is the ear. And then here again, now you can see these shadows. And we're not going to be scared to paint them as they really are since we already got other dark values up on the canvas. So this is an important little part of the neck to help find the cylinder of the neck. So we're going to put that in right here. Now looking at these colors, I'm just checking and comparing the values of the neck. And if you look at the loop, you can see I haven't gone nearly dark enough on the neck value compared to the reference. So I'm going to grab this darker color right here, and I'm going to color in all of this now, because this should get a darker value. And then up in this cheekbone, we have that color. Let's start carving that in as well. We don't want to shy away from these tones because if we do, we're never going to get the light. So then here, let's see about a richer tone for the skin. So if you color pick from the skin, don't pick the highlight zone. That's not going to be a good base color. So we want to grab something a bit richer in tone so that the highlights eventually will really have room to sing. So then here, this is going to be a little halftone color change, and eventually we're going to work into this cheekbone. So here, the headscarf wraps around a little more, and it comes out a bit more. But I'm keeping in mind that negative space, so I'm going to cut back in. And I can see I probably need to add a little more scarf here. Now let's go ahead and flip this. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to press flip horizontally. This is a great way to change up your perspective. It reveals mistakes. Since you're not used to seeing it in this view, you'll see it with a fresh eye. So what I'm seeing is this space right here is just too big compared to this space. It's slight, but it's definitely different. So I see I just need to pull her face out a bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that out the way it needs to be. As soon as you see something's off, go ahead and make that change because it's easier to move things around in this beginning stage of the piece than it will be later on in the piece. And I'm seeing she has a lot more hair here, so I'm going to put that dark shape in. And here's a nice transition color here. So now I really want to squint down. This part of the scarf here is definitely a darker value. So I want to get the different values of light and shadow on this headscarf. That's a nice pretty little turn in that cloth, so we want to make sure we grab onto that. This cloth is turning a bit more than I have it, so let's just start to get that little bit of turn around the head. Because all of this needs to turn and conform to the roundness of the head. So something quite challenging about this piece is the tilt of her head. This is not an easy reference, but we're going to keep at it as this type of challenge is a great learning opportunity. So I noticed that getting darker, so I just want to make sure it gets nice and dark. And here I'm just grabbing this dark color and pulling in the next some. Something that we want to consider is how we're seeing a little bit of the underside of her jaw. So I'm drawing a little to try and convey that. So now I'm just painting a tone on where the masseter muscle would be. And I see this light value shape here, so I'm trying to put that in now. Here this cheekbone is a bit bigger, so I want to put that in better. And now let's go ahead and turn on another version. We don't want to get too caught up in the details. So uncheck reference to reveal reference blurred. Just make sure you keep your painting layer selected though. And let's go ahead and try working from that for a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this again, and we're going to get going on this. So what I see here is, look at this blob of color on her nose. It's so simple. It's just a simple little blob. And we're not going to make a big deal about it. We're just going to go like that. There's that little blob. Then here we have another little blob, right? This little blob right here. It's not an eye, it's a blob. So we're going to go over here and just put that little blob in. And then I see an almost S curve here. So let's get that little curve in there. I know, it's scary. We're getting there. So here's a darker tone I notice right in here. Gonna get that in there. And then I find that all of this connects. So it's not like there's a blob here and it doesn't connect. It all connects here to this other blob. Even this connects here to that blob. So we're finding connections between these similar values. That's what we're doing here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick up this color right here, and I notice it's kind of orangey. I'm just going to push it a little more orangey actually. And I just want to get it right around this hairline. And then I'm going to pick up this color again and bring back the roundness of the forehead. Now I'm picking up that tone on the nose. It's nice to get a slightly darker tone on the nose, because when you put in the highlights on the nose later, they'll really pop nicely. So I can see that the whole head is shifting straight on my painting. As humans, our natural tendency can be to straighten things out. But she has a subtle tilt that I want to capture. So how can we fix this? So all the imaginary lines on the front planes of her face need to conform to perspective. They need to tilt. So this forehead needs to tilt. This line of the eyebrows needs to tilt. This line of the nose needs to tilt. I find first with this, it's easier to just make sure everything tracks in the same general direction. Then later, we'll look a little closer at the unique perspective of this reference. So we don't want to get too far along without taking a look at the tilt. So keep that in the back of your head as you're painting and keep checking in on it. So continuing on, I want to get that nice and dark. I do want to shape this up a little bit, so I'm really lightly putting that in. I do notice that eventually we're going to have another eye in here, so I want to get that in. And I know she's going through the ugly duckling phase right now, and that's normal for a painting. It's okay. So now I'm going to go with a little more of a peachy color on the nose. Often the nose will have a more saturated tone than the rest of the face. And I think what's going to help us push this forward is putting a tone here on the lips. So I'm going to go in here and put a simple little blob. Not lips, a blob of color. No drawing or outlining, just painting simple shapes of value, simple shapes of color. And she definitely has an upturned nose, so I'm hinting at that. And here I'm just going to grab this color again and tuck that in a bit. In here, there's this nice little warm color that happens. So I'm just going to pull that back a little. So I want to get a couple more things down, like this little dark shape behind the ear. And then I want to hint at some of these shapes on the scarf. I'm not thinking about them too much, I'm just getting something up on the canvas so we can push it around. Here's that swing of the hair. Here's a little darker value I see in there. So I'm just popping around the piece and looking at edges as well. See this little blurry edge here? That's kind of cool. So I'm starting to look at edges as well. You can achieve a softer edge by making the two shapes touching very similar in value. Or you can crisp up an edge by adding more contrast between the values. Let's get this nice and dark because I want to establish all these base values. And then I want to add a little bit more warmth here around the nose. Here, I want to establish this a bit better because I'm losing this hairline. So let me grab onto the hair color and put that in a bit better. Something else I can get in is this little transition here that happens on the forehead. That value change helps us transition from shadow to light. Now I'm just making this a little lighter. Now looking at the negative space of the background again, I notice the background can kind of tuck in. And then the lips here could go like that. Now here, I want to get down where the V-neck ends. So I just trail straight over and put that in. Now I want to get this shape I see in the hair a little bit better. And I'm starting to see this dark abstract shape here that groups several values all together. So if you see something like this, try to capture that. Grouping values like this is what's going to help simplify the composition, making it more readable. In this stage, don't think about drawing. Think about painting shapes of value or shapes of color. Sometimes if you think too much about the drawing, it can freak you out and put too much pressure on yourself to make something perfect. I find working in this blob state really helps with that. Something else I notice is how the scarf back here sort of blends into the background. So I'm hinting at that. And we can play more with the hard and soft edges on the scarf more later. Now let's go back to layers. And let's bring reference blurred down a little in opacity. So it's the blurred reference exposing a little bit of the ref simplified now. And now I'm going back to my painting layer. Always make sure you do that. Now here on the neck, I see this spot of light got a little too big. It looks more like an oval in shape, so I paint it like that. And right around the rim where the light and shadow shapes touch, you can add a little heat with some orange paint. And what I'm seeing now is the hair over here, so I'm going to put that in. I want to bring everything up together on this painting. I'm working on getting the forehead more accurate little by little. Thinking about the roundness of it now. Now I'm working on these lips, looking at the shape and rhythm of them. I want to also make sure I get the tip of the nose in here eventually, so I'm hinting at that. That's not quite right though. And the nose is such an anchor, so I want to put it in right. So I'm going to go back. Once I anchor a nose in, just mentally I find I don't want to move it. So I'll wait on any specifics until I drop in some straight lines to check the placement. For now, I'll just keep it about shapes of value. I want to find a nice transition color between the skin color on her forehead and the color of her hair. You gotta have a middle of the road transition color right here to smoothly transition you from the skin to the hair. Otherwise, it'll look a little strange. Now I'm just working on refining some of the shapes up here. So this brush does a really nice sharp edge on one side and a softer edge on the other side. So that's why I turned my canvas that way, to get that sharp edge between the hair and the headscarf. Just adding a soft transition color in here between the light and darks on the scarf. This will help soften the transition. Now I'm just pushing around what I've got up here, trying to look back and forth between reference and painting to help me make adjustments to the shapes. Right now everything is in a malleable state, and I'm trying to keep it that way until I get enough paint up on the canvas. Then we'll take a closer look with some measurements. So what you can do if you want to find a transition color between two colors is pick up the one color and note where it lands on the color sphere. Then pick up the other color and note where it lands in comparison. Then select a color that would land right in between those two values. This will help you find good segue colors between values where you want to soften the transition. Popping in this little bit of light on the hood of the eye now, where the orbicularis muscle is. So in the beginning, you start big with this approach. You put in your big shapes of value and just get it up on the canvas so you can start pushing it around. Then after that, you start thinking about placing things a bit more accurately and those transition colors. I'm still just using this 6B pencil, which I find is great for getting started on a painting like this. I like using brushes with a little texture, so if you're using another painting program, I would suggest not using anything too fluffy or soft. This type of brush can make you too careful when you're painting. So I would use a brush that's a little bit grungy or has a bit of a harder edge. Here I'm just trying to pick up some of the slight value changes in the hair. We got in the big shapes, so now we're heading into medium shapes. Again, always thinking about rhythms and the whole. Back on this face, the darker value here comes out more. So I'm working to correct that. I'm just trying to get in some of those more subtle color shifts now. Let's find a transition color between the neck and shadow here. That helps segue us a little better between the dark and the light of the skin. Let's do the same thing over on this hairline. Here's the darker value, here's the lighter value. Something in the middle would be about there. And there's our transition color. Eventually, the color picker won't be quite as helpful anymore. Because there are so many colors in this reference image, it's hard to pick up the exact colors every time. So eventually, you'll have to go off the colors that actually ended up in your painting and shift to new colors from there. So keep that in mind as you move along. Okay, I think we've got a good base here. So let's move into nailing this down a bit better with some measuring techniques. Hi, my name is Gabrielle Brickey. I've been drawing and painting portraits for over 20 years. And today, I want to paint one with you. In this class, we'll be painting a portrait together in Procreate. If you don't have Procreate, no worries. All mediums are welcomed and encouraged. In this class, I'll be doing something completely new. I'll be sharing my portrait making process with you in real time. So you'll see the full painting process at my exact pace, mistakes and all. In this real-time portrait demo, you'll learn how to approach the blank canvas with confidence. As you follow along with me step by step, I'll show you how to paint with simple shapes, which brushes to use where and why, and how to paint a face easily with accurate proportions. You'll learn techniques for different styles of brushwork, and we'll also talk about how to simplify your painting and not get caught up and lost in all the intimidating details. This class is best suited for artists who've painted portraits before, but you're welcome to follow along whether you're an absolute beginner or a more advanced artist, since you'll see the process step by step in real time. I'll be sharing my exact set of Procreate brushes, so if you're working with this app too, you'll be able to download and use these brushes for free. You'll also get the exact reference I'm using ready to go. So whether you're looking to hone your portrait painting skills or just ready to relax and have a bit of creative fun, join in because I'd love for you to paint with me.